Um, and we're doing the chat in English. We changed it from Wednesday. So tonight is the English chat. And let me write it here for the people who okay. As you can see, I have a statement up on camera, and you can see that you can't see me. Let me change this so that you can actually see me. Oh dear. Okay. My name is Frances Fox, and I'm very happy to be here tonight to share with you what it is that I know with my remote viewing skills. I was trained since I was a child to be able to see into other dimensions, and I've been observing. I'm 72, so I've been observing for a long time. For many decades, I was not able to share this with anybody because people would think I was crazy. It was, how did I learn to do this? Why did I think I was right? Why is it that science is not telling us this? So today, there's enough of you who either believe about the depth and the width of what's in the other dimensions, or you're willing to at least listen and to be respectful of what's being said. And that's really all I want, is for you to listen and to have the information, and then maybe one day it'll be really useful. So I'm going to start by saying that science says that there are 11 dimensions and probably up to 20. Now, most of the general public does not know that. And all of our laws and institutions and behavior is based on the dimensions that we are familiar with. So I'm going to talk to you about what it is that's going on today that makes it really important that you widen the lens and include what's happening in the other dimensions, because what's happening there is really influencing you on this dimension. It always has influenced you, but never as much as today, because the veils that separate the different dimensions are getting very flimsy. And if biblical philosophy is accurate, and if the Mayans were accurate, those veils are all going to go up, and we're going to be mixing together with whatever it is that's happening in the other dimensions. But before we start with the information, let's do what we're all going to do in the future, but let's start now here, and let's protect ourselves from stuff that's going on in other dimensions. When you have like Catholic ceremonies, the first thing they do is some protection prayers. They use incense. There's some chanting. In Buddhist ceremonies, it's the same thing. In indigenous ceremonies, it's exactly the same thing. There's always protection. So let's go ahead and protect you while we're talking, so that we don't get a lot of interference. We have all of these energy bodies, and we're not going to get into those today. We've discussed them before. But in this blue body and in the gold body, underneath the bottom of your body, what is totally the bottom of your body, which is in between your anus and your sexual organs, that point there, which is the furthest point down of all your body, is, there's a name for it. It's called your root chakra. Below it, 2 more inches down, parallel to the floor, there is, in other dimensions, a secret door, which is called the Brahmavara. And it's the door to the path, what they call Shibalba, which is the path to hell. When you are very afraid, or if there's a big trauma, that door blows open, and hell is able to come in and invade you. That's why when you get really scared, you can have all these crazy thoughts. And then when the scare goes down, all of a sudden, you're okay. Well, when you were scared, the door was open, you got flooded with all this stuff that's supposed to stay down there. Hell is always down there. And once it goes back down, because you got relaxed again, you got okay, then all of a sudden your world is different. Right now, I want you to go there. I want you to breathe. I want you to pretend that you actually see that door. Some of you may see it, some of you may not. And just breathe and close it and keep closing it. If you can't see a door there, imagine that you could see a door there. Because there is a door there. This is information that's thousands of years old, and go ahead and close it. Okay. The next thing you're going to do for protection is to protect your root chakra by visualizing, which for some of you means pretending that you're sitting on top of a very big lotus flower. And that lotus flower has petals that are so fat and big that they actually reach your knees. Now, why a lotus flower? Because lotuses flourish even in swamps. In other words, nothing can take a lotus down. And that's what we want for you. We want that additional protection of that lotus flower. Then, and go ahead and breathe as you're visualizing it, and visualize it in the back part of your body also. Then I want you to go all the way up to here, and I am going to look for the graphic as you are going to the top of your head, and I want for you to open a door there. The top of your head is your crown chakra. Chakras are energy centers. I want you to go there, and I want you to open a door and then extend this tube that's inside of you, which is a central channel. Extend it until you go beyond this black cloud, which is on top of planet Earth, and you hit this gold and you just breathe it in. You start to channel it. Okay? That is making you ready for this chat. But it will also make you ready when you have to study, when you have to prepare for something, when you have to go into an important meeting, when you're feeling really out of sorts and all of a sudden you don't feel right, you're scared, everything bothers you. Go ahead and do those three things, because you're closing the door to hell, which is always a really good thing. You're protecting your root chakra, which is your stability. And then you're opening and you're channeling faith, God energy, spiritual energy. So it channels in like a nectar. They talk about that in the Bible. And it goes into these 72,000 strings, which we have shown you before. Okay, so now go ahead and breathe. And if you put your fingers in these position, which is called the Apana Mudra, notice the way my breathing changed, because I'm now breathing also into this bottom half of my body. We apparently, humans, have two types of breath, prana, which most of us have heard about, but then aprana is the breath for the lower part of the body. And when you do the Apana Mudra, you breathe into the lower part of your body, you become more grounded and centered. My voice always softens. I feel and I look more feminine when I do that. I'm more inside. I'm trying to get this, not able to do it. It's okay. So you can do this. If you need to listen to a teacher and you're bored, if you need to listen to your boss or pay attention to something that you really don't want to pay attention to, or you're very nervous because of something that happened back home or with a coworker or with another student, whatever. If you do this, notice how my voice again dropped. You will stay calmer. And the person that's calm can think. And to be able to think is really important today, because people are too riled up emotionally. So why do I want you all protected and settled? Because I'm going to give you what I think is very important information. We have a lot of things going on in planet Earth today. So many that it's completely crazy. So many that we don't actually believe authorities anymore. When the weatherman says something, we know that he doesn't have a total grip on what's going on. All these hurricanes that were supposed to devastate everybody ended up stopping. Flooding that was supposed to go one way when another. Everything is kind of like not as it's supposed to be. Our scientists predict one thing, another thing happens. They say one thing, and then 5 years later, we find out that that really wasn't the way it went. So it's like, why on earth should we believe them? And that is one of the big changes on planet Earth. Our life has been based on a triangle, the triangular shape having to do with power. And the people at the top, everybody at the bottom of that triangle looks up at them and pays attention to them and honors them and obeys them and protects them, such as scientists. We have obeyed and listened to science, even though they've made a ton of mistakes. But now we're not believing them that much. We're also not believing the head of religions. We're also not believing or paying attention to the head of the most important countries in the world. We're also not believing a lot of times the father and the family, because sometimes the kids know more. That is happening, and it was predicted thousands of years ago that that would happen. In the Bible, and I'm not Christian or Catholic, I'm just quoting things as I remember them, whether it's Buddhism or shamanism or from the Bible, whatever. But it was said that at this time, the meek shall inherit the earth. In other words, what we would have considered the people at the bottom of that triangle of power. And that is happening. And that includes kids today who don't really have the respect for authority that they had before. People don't have respect for the police. They're not having respect for science the way they did before. And pretty soon we're not going to be respecting them at all. And after this health crisis that we've had, a lot of people are really not respecting what the medical profession has to say about disease. But that was predicted. That's the fall of hierarchy. And that is all around us. What does that mean? It means that the way we used to be and the people we respected and paid attention to, they're not in a position of authority anymore. We can't trust them as much, or we don't trust them at all, which puts the power on us. We hold the power. We're not turning it over to anybody, but that's very scary. And I'm sure that young people are looking at their parents in society and going, why aren't they running this show better than they're running it? Didn't they know that they'd get into trouble by doing all these things? Why are they surprised at all this violence and everything that's happening? Because younger people sometimes have a wider lens, more vision. And people literally, since 1948, are born much more evolved, which means much more mind expanded. It's all about the human potential. And more of it is being achieved today. But that's a little bit problematic when you have laws that have to do with yesterday. So we have a collapse of a paradigm where we don't respect the person who's supposed to be above us. We don't see them above us anymore. We see them as just like us. That's also part of the new age of Aquarius information. We have started to enter the age of Aquarius. It's many, many years long. So it's not like you enter 1 year and that's it. You're fully into it. We're entering it. Community. You don't have the person at the top. Everybody's opinion is worth as much as the next guy's, which is what's happening, except we're not used to it. And that's where all the chaos is coming. We are in a change of systems on planet Earth. More elegantly, they call it a change in paradigm, a collapse of the old paradigm, and a new one that's based more on the age of Aquarius characteristics and qualities, which are great. But the problem is the change between honoring and respecting authority, even if we can see that they're terrible, but they're in charge, that collapsing and then going into everybody created equal. So who's going to be in charge here? So that's the backdrop. And then we have the whole thing with the violence and people being very different and the craziness that's going on inside people's heads, especially the younger kids. That is explained by what is the original medicine on the planet, which is shamanism. The indigenous, the Indians, where they had their tribe and there was one person that was like the healer, the medicine man. What they practiced was shamanism. Shamanism is the original medicine of the planet. And basically, all the other medicines, except for modern medicine, is based on the major principles of shamanism. And what are those principles? The reason I'm bringing them up is because those principles explain what's going on in society today. We don't just have a collapse of a paradigm. why all of this violence? Why all of this craziness? Shamanism explains it. In shamanism, the fundamental rule, principle, belief, which is also the fundamental principle of Chinese medicine and Ayurveda, which is the medicine from India that's 5,000 years old. The basis is that health is a balance of the four elements: water, air, fire, and earth. Modern medicine, they may not even know what the four elements are. So they don't take care of that part of you. The trick of the matter is that the part of you that gets sick first is in the other dimensions, where the elements are everything. The reality is created with the four elements. So when you balance the elements, you're balancing out what you're going to be creating. In this case, we're talking about health, but health of the body, but also health of the planet. So shamanism deals with elements. And the second thing shamanism deals with is spirits. Oh dear, we're going to talk about spirits now. Okay, well, this is going to get a little crazy here. No, what gets crazy is if you don't know, not only do spirits exist, they're not only all around you and everywhere, they're on top of you and they are inside of you. You cannot have a diseased organ, like maybe your liver, without there being at least one spirit inside it, on top of it, or hammering on it. When you have a headache, you have a spirit hammering on you. When you have tension in some part of the body, you have a spirit there. When you have wrinkles, such as I have here, there's spirits there. Remove the spirit and everything relaxes. When human beings get very stressed, they can have a spirit that is right here in the upper lid of your left eye. And you could end up with a wrinkle there from one day to the next. And when the crisis in your life goes away, that wrinkle goes away because that was caused by a spirit. You can have crazy thoughts in your head, things that you would never want to think about, and they are spirits whispering in your ears. Now, this is knowledge that has been forever on the planet. What happened that in this modern time, we don't take it into consideration? Well, my opinion is that the spirits are really good at hiding and in getting us not to see them so that we don't protect ourselves from them. There are good spirits and there are bad spirits and there are medium spirits and there's spirits in all sorts of shapes and sizes. They don't just look like humans. But there's so many of them that are not so great and they're very savvy. And I used to joke a lot and say that if I ever ran a big corporation, I would want one of those bad spirits to be in charge because I was going to make $1 gazillion because they're really good at what they do. And they know everything because they're in the other dimensions. And from there, everybody knows everything. So what is shamanism? They talk about and try to balance the elements, and they deal with spirits. Jesus Christ, everything he did was outdoors. And they had buildings in his time. Everything was outdoors. You don't have to worry about the elements because you're living in them. We don't do that today. It's making us very sick. And the first thing Jesus Christ did when he went to do a healing was to release the spirits. So you know what? We do have the information about spirits. We just don't, we hear about it on Sunday, and then we have people we respect, such as ministers and pastors and whatever, that negotiate our life between us and the spirit world. But the truth of the matter is the spirits are there 7 days a week. And we need to know about them because if there's something that's not right in our lives, there's always a spirit there that's influencing it. Now, a lot of the spirits are there bothering us, but we, at the deepest level, that spirit is actually doing us a favor because they're putting in our face that there's something that's not right, that our energy system has a hole in it and they were able to come in or to attach. And so it's like a red flag. Oh, no, I have a spirit attached to this, whatever. It's a red flag. There's something in you that's broken and the spirit is able to influence you or to come into your system And so the spirit is a symptom, not the causal. Okay, but we're talking about the planet now. We're not just talking about your physical body. So let's go back to shamanism, because the only thing that explains the violence today is applying the principles of shamanism to what's happening in society. Okay, so let's go first to the elements. Earth, water, fire. Earth, water, fire. Darn. Earth, water, fire, and air. So sorry. So there's not a balance on planet Earth because we're very sick. So what element do you think that today is dominating the planet, is overwhelming the other elements? Well, very obviously the element of fire. We have global warming. We have the fires across the planet like they've never been before. And then we have the fire in human beings. Oh, well, what am I talking about? They're not on fire. Actually, they are on fire in the other dimensions. What are the symptoms of too much fire in a human being? Anxiety, can't sleep. It's been years people are not sleeping. Irritation, okay. Frustration. 70-some% of employees in this country are frustrated at their jobs. They don't want to be there. Anger, a lot of that. Emotional violence, out of control. Physical violence, out of control. Killings, too many. Those are all symptoms of excess fire inside the person. So we have an explanation of what's going on planet Earth in terms of human behavior, and an explanation of what's going on in terms of the fire and the fact that humans need to drink more water. In the 90s or the 80s, nobody ever had a bottle of water. You drank water whenever you drank water at dinner, and then you spent your day and you never went out looking for a bottle of water. You never carried a bottle. There were no bottles of water. There was a water fountain at work and at school. One water fountain for 300 kids. Today, everybody has bottles of water. Everybody's dehydrated because there's too much fire. And water puts out fire. So every time you see all those big floodings and all those catastrophes with water, it's actually Mother Earth trying to put out some of the excess fire that the planet is getting devastated by. It's getting burnt up. And water puts out fire. So does Earth put out fire. Okay, well, let's go into human behavior. So what can help a human being who's super frustrated? Going to the beach, taking a lot of tub baths, walking in the rain, even though you're not going to do that very often. Being in nature, everything that has to do with earth, trees, plants, mountains. You can actually even have photographs of trees, mountains, the beach. And from those photographs or from that piece of art or from that painting, the intention of nature will transfer to you and put out your fire. I had an Ayurvedic doctor who I respect very much, who years ago, when I did not know this, I did not understand this that I'm teaching you today, that I needed to get a painting or something and put it on my wall that was of the ocean or the beach. And I went, oh, okay. And I thought, what a weird medical suggestion. I never did it. I mean, it just kind of like flew over my head. Today, I understand. I needed more water in my system, in the other dimensions. And even a painting will give me that. So if you're very frustrated, get yourself a picture, a painting, cut it out of a magazine, put it on as your screensaver of water, because we are all burning up, and that burning up is making us very difficult to live with. The planet is going into a cycle of violence that we really don't know how it's going to end, but we kind of know it's not going to end well. But you need to take care of yourself, your family, your job, your studies, whatever it is that you do. So don't give up by looking at the outside world, because there's an interesting thing that's happening today, and that is that For the first time in human history, our individual reality is separated from everybody else's. Before, the whole planet moved in one direction or another. We're kind of stuck together as a human community. But in the last several years, and for whatever reason, I'm not going to go into that, we now have the ability to create our own reality totally without at all having resonance or frequency match or the same vibe as what's happening right next to us. What does that mean? That means that you can be living on a planet full of violence and chaos where everybody's falling off the edge of the world, and you can be fine. First time in human history. First time. There's a separation of vibrations apparently going on to where many people are really going down, down, down. They're just losing their grip on everything. Their world is collapsing. But other of us are shifting up. Our vibe is getting lighter because we've released a lot of old things. One of the reasons I'm telling you about the paradigm collapse, the paradigm shift, the changes from hierarchy to community is so that you can understand when you make choices that you need to be more community minded. I am a person who I have a very unusual history. It's not easy for me to work with people because I was trained to not work with people, for nobody to know what was going on with me. I had a very secret life that was imposed upon me, but that I followed diligently, as any kid would. And that leaves its scars. And one of the scars is it's hard for me to work in community and to work with other people. That's a problem because now we're in the age of Aquarius. And this thing about being the center of attention and being in charge of everything or being a slave at the bottom of the hierarchy doesn't work anymore. We have to learn to work together, which is especially difficult for somebody like me, but I still need to learn it. But there's whole generations that are never going to learn that because they don't understand that we are moving into a different era. But if you're listening to this, remember that. If you've got a project, you want to do it by yourself, okay? I mean, you can do this. You might want to consider opening up the power a little bit and including and working with another person because you will have a lot more support from the other dimensions. The other dimensions is where reality is created. So you need that support. And that's what's going on with people that are too individualistic today, or corporations where they're insisting on staying in charge of a particular aspect of our life, and they're struggling. They're struggling because they're not being supported, not by people, they're not being supported by the energies and what is power in the other dimensions. Let's go back to the whole thing with spirits. There's an organization in this part of the world that teaches all about spirits. They charge thousands of dollars. Somebody told me laughingly that I had a video that was $17.99 years ago, and they laughed and said I was charging $17.99 to teach what this particular organization was teaching for tens of thousands of dollars. That organization, it was Scientology. I don't know what they teach, but from what I have been told by people who have been outside, basically it's how to control the spirits in your life. And then you use them to control other people and other things, which is actually not the way that it's supposed to go, but this is a planet of free will, so everybody is allowed to do whatever it is that they want to do. And that's the darn truth. If you want to be bad in this planet, you are allowed to be bad. You have the right to be bad. It's a law, free will. So going back to spirits, I think I think that there's some stories I'd love to tell you, but this is a little bit premature. I'm going to just repeat again that any place that you have a defect, that you have a problem, that you have a compulsion, that you have an addiction, that you have an aspect of you that you don't like, but you haven't managed to get it shifted, changed, healed, cured, you have a huge spirit attached to you that is creating that issue and does not want to go away. So it's not letting go, and so you still have that issue. Mantras that I teach, and I'm not going to teach them today, are very effective at helping you to release spirits. So I'll just teach you one. Let's say you have a characteristic you have that you can't stand, but you haven't been able to get rid of it. Let's say you're mean to your brother, your little brother, and you don't want to be like that, but he just makes you crazy. That means you have too much fire. Crazy means there's a spirit attached. If you just do a mantra like, even though I can't stand my brother, I love and accept myself. And you keep repeating it. You repeat in silence in your head. Don't move your mouth. Even though I can't stand my brother, I love and accept myself. You will purify that reaction of not being able to stand your little brother. It might be your husband. It might be your wife. It might be your kid who's making you crazy one afternoon. You're trying to get some work done and your kid is making you crazy. You can do the mantra. Even though I can't stand her, I love and accept myself. Silently, without moving the mouth. And you'll purify that feeling. And you should, and I'll tell you why. Because that feeling, as you repeat, you feel it. And the kid knocks something down, or your little brother ruins something in your room. As you get more angry, your energy system breaks, your protection. A spirit comes in, and then they go on and on in your head. God, I can't stand him. God, I can't stand him. God, I wish he would disappear. I wish he was dead. I wish he was never. Those words were not yours. That's a spirit that was able to come in because you got too frustrated. That's why it's always good to do the mantra to get control of that frustration before it ends up breaking something, which is basically breaking your protection. And then you end up with a spirit that's getting closer and closer and closer and closer. But the most important thing about spirits for you to know today is, because there are so many people who are mentally ill, 20% of young kids are classified now as mentally ill. That was never the case before. We see so many crazy people. We see people that are normal going crazy. What's that all about? Well, it was said that in the age of Aquarius, there would be an incredible increase in technology. That has happened. They also said there would be an incredible increase in mental illness, and that has also happened. Is there a connection between the two things? Yes. And this is something you're not going to read about in very many places, because there's too many important people with power and with money that don't want this information out there. But we need to get it out there, because we're losing our humanity. We're losing the kids. We're losing our family and friends due to mental distortions, to mental illness, to depressions, to emotional violence, to anger. So much anger that we don't even remember that we love people anymore. By the way, the love is never lost. It's inside. The anger is on top. So what do we need to know about mental illness? I wrote a book, which is not out yet. And as I was writing about our spirit body, which is usually called our astral body, which is the gold body right here. That's the body that when you die, it separates from your physical body. And people go, oh, I saw his spirit. Well, you have that even before you die. Okay? You have that. So there are many spirits. You have a spirit. Your sister has a spirit. You're in class with 12 other students. They all have a spirit. So it's 12 physical bodies and 12 spirits. But then you have a spirit attached. That's the one that holds all that rage at your little brother that is always ruining everything because he's too little and he breaks and blah, blah, blah. Or you're married to somebody and you're really over it and you can't stand the woman that you're married to, the man that you're married to, whatever, but you can't say anything because you actually do love him and you don't want to get a divorce. So you have to take that emotion and kind of wrap it tight, and it ends up splitting. You end up getting a second spirit body. You already got a physical body. Now you got a spirit body. Now you got two. Yes, and you probably have more. The Mayans called them subpersonalities. You know, like everything's fine. You know, if somebody she's great, she's always smiling. And then every 2 or 3 years, she gets goes into a meltdown that's scary enough to almost call the police, that's a subpersonality. It's a spirit, one of hers, that's over here, and something made her so angry that law of attraction, this spirit that's full of anger, she's full of anger, it comes in, takes over, does whatever, screaming, ranting, raving, or yelling at the police officer, whatever, get you into trouble, or this woman gets into trouble, and then it moves away because the person settles down. So the planet has always been full of all these spirits, and we haven't really gotten a lot of education about this. The indigenous people, yes. In Chinese medicine, even though in this country we don't know it, they actually have 33 acupuncture points that are called ghost points, that the acupuncturist can work on those points if she thinks you might have a spirit attached. That's not discussed very much in this country because that's just not part of modern medicine, but it is part of your life. And in Chinese medicine, in Ayurveda, they also deal with the spirits. So there's a lot of spirits around. Okay, so why am I going on and on about this right now is because if you don't have the spirits in your life under control, you can become and will become mentally ill. In Tibet, you're not allowed to use skeleton heads in your jewelry or in your clothing unless you have the spirits in your life under control. I think that's a super neat concept. It's like a little badge of courage if you wear some jewelry with a skeleton head on it. We don't know that. We're even afraid to acknowledge that there are spirits, but how can we deny them if the religion, it doesn't matter what religion you belong to, they know and they teach you that there are spirits. They don't teach you a lot. They don't teach you enough. They won't discuss it with you. And when you were little and you said there was a monster in the closet, which is a spirit, everybody said there wasn't. And if you kind of feel like something in your room and you're scared, that's a spirit. The spirits have done a really good job at getting us not to openly acknowledge that they exist. Because if not, we could protect ourselves from them. We not just protect ourselves from them, but we could end up protecting them by giving them healings so that they would be where it is that they're supposed to be. Like the woman who has the meltdowns. She gets so angry, she loses it every 2 or 3 years. Or the people that drink and then they turn into a monster, even their faces change. That's because the spirit came in. The more we know about them, the more we can help them, because that spirit that just came in is not a happy spirit. It's in the other dimensions. It's not happy because they also are happy or unhappy. They're also neurotic to a certain degree or maxed out in terms of being neurotic and out of control and afraid. Spirits also feel fear. So I'm going to start wrapping this up by saying that we all chose to live at this time, which is an incredibly difficult time for human beings on the physical dimension. It's even more difficult for your spirit, which is your astral body, in the other dimensions, because that part of you is getting beaten up. Because the spirits in the other dimension are totally out of control at this time in written human history. It was predicted. Those are the images of the apocalypse. What does the word apocalypse mean? It means to reveal, to lift veils. And that's what's happening now. The veils between us and the spirit world is lifting. Well, if you really didn't believe in spirits or everybody's afraid of them, that's a huge issue. But if there's even more of them than there's ever been and they are sick, it's even a bigger issue. And if there's even more of them pouring onto the planet for various reasons, not for nothing that Trump set up a new division of the military called Space Force, okay? And it wasn't because they're in love with Star Wars movies, even though Star Wars movies are something we need to see, because those movies were a prediction of what's going on today, because spirits come in all sorts of shapes and colors and sizes. Some of them have the shape of a human being, but a lot of them don't. So what I'm saying today is that this information looking at what's going on in the world through the eyes of a shaman, which is the original medical system of the planet, of balance of the elements and seeing that there's too much fire. By the way, everything electronic, all your little devices radiate fire. And that's the biggest issue today with mental illness, because that fire literally burns the blue body that's right there, the second one. And that body, as you can see, is like a grid. It's a fencing material that blocks spirits from coming in. So you have the element issue with the extra fire, which you need to deal with by making sure you turn off everything at night. You don't sleep or live near the router. You don't sleep with the computer on top of your body. You put the cell phone far away. You turn it off. You're not always hanging on to it. You definitely don't put it to your head, etc. And so that you don't lose so that you balance out your elements. And then you have the second thing, which are the spirits. And the first thing to do there is to acknowledge that they exist. Every religion in the world talks about them, and that you need to learn more about them and how to deal with them in your life so that you can use skeletons in your jewelry or in your clothing, or if you ever wanted to do a tattoo, I'm not suggesting that you do it, that you literally would have the right to do it because you have the spirits in your life under control. Spirits are very interesting. I'll just end with one little story. I am overweight. A lot of people are. And people that are overweight sometimes always are thinking about food, even if they don't want to think about food. For a sign that there's a spirit. One day I was laying in bed. This is just a little story just to widen your lens. I'm laying in bed, and all of a sudden I start to think about what's happening in my refrigerator, which means there's food sitting there that I would enjoy eating. And I don't know where this came from, but all of a sudden I just turned to the side and said, I'm not going to eat that. Well, there wasn't anything there, but yes, there was. There was a spirit here to where if I just looked to the side, I couldn't see it. But obviously some part of me knew that there was a spirit there, and the spirit was the one that was putting images in my mind of the food in the refrigerator. Now that's a cute little story, but that happens 100 times a day with many different things in your life, many of which are much more severe than this cute little story of me recognizing there's a spirit and me yelling at it. By the way, yelling is very good. In the Bible, they call it casting out spirits, and you do not do it gently. So that is what I would like to share with you today, and I hope that you have enjoyed this, and I will open up the chat in case there's questions. And I close the chat because I get easily distracted. And why do I have the pet there? Because animals are spirits that are inside the body of a physical animal, but they're very savvy and they're extremely helpful, and they know how to speak in our heads in our language. And you should open up to all of those possibilities, which is not new information on the planet. So let's see what kind of questions we have. Okay, and you know that tomorrow is the second day of the mandala, and the monks increase the number of people who can get on Zoom at the same time. They increased it to 500. I don't think we're going to have 500 people today. A lot of people weren't able to see the ceremony. The link is right there below here. It's on my Facebook page all over the place and also on Instagram. And you'll see them as they're building with pieces of sand, with little grains of sand, this beautiful piece of art. And they'll be there tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday from 10 in the morning to 5 in the afternoon. I don't know if they take a break from the Zoom, but it's for monks that are always bent over that table building it. So please join us. And if you want to do a mantra as you're washing them, watching that, and they usually have some Buddhist music on, will augment your frequency and help for your mantra to be more powerful. Did she like it, Stella? So we're going to be doing this on Tuesday nights, and because it was Wednesday nights. Okay? And so I'm going to say good night. And I see you enjoyed my story about the spirit that was putting images in my head. Okay? Well, you're going to be able to see it, Anna, because they augmented the number of people. I wish they had done that for the purification ceremony. By the way, the purification ceremony is on Thursday, and I do not have the link. Let's see if I can get it quickly, but there's only going to be 2 more ceremonies because the monks have got to, the monks only have a year visa. Their year is up. They have to return to India. They don't know if anybody's coming back because of the pandemic. They're not able to travel to different cities. Okay, here is the link for the prosperity ceremony. So there's only 2 more ceremonies. I mean, they had told me this from before, but I didn't believe that they wouldn't resolve the issue. I was an optimist, but they haven't resolved the issue because it's a national issue. So I strongly suggest this prosperity ceremony because the testimonials are unbelievable. And we will see you tomorrow to witness the construction of the mandala, and everybody will be able to enter today. And I hope that you enjoyed this. Good night.